more than one school, more than 2 schools, more than 3 schools, brief what's going on, and then some follow-up meetings with the CSUs, the UCs, at the last College Connect at Cal State East Bay. The CSU number, which is $55 per application, but it's going to be more than that, I'm sure, when you're applying. Media, some of it, much of it, is going to attract students with special talents. But here went to school. How many of you went to CSU or UC? Because there are not really that many in this crowd. To protect their community college transfers. We'll talk a little bit more about community college. They are trying not to reduce those numbers. In fact, they're trying to increase them, even if it's just ever so slightly. So the UCs were up 500. Doesn't sound like much system-wide, but it's better than the other, undergrads are being cut, first-time freshmen. So what's happening with transfers now? There are no longer lower division transfers allowed into the UCs and not into most of the CSUs. You must complete 60 units of lower division, so that's good for the UCs and CSUs. Go to your lower division at the community college. And you have to complete a certain pattern of courses called GE or IDESI, and you have to complete the prep for the major. And some schools you can write a transfer agreement to and just transfer directly over. You get an agreement. Sophomore year, you would sit down with the counselor, plan out the rest of your work to be done, you meet the GPA, you're in. They hold space for you. Of course, Cal and UCLA do not have a tag. I don't know if increasingly fewer schools will have a tag as the pressure goes on the schools. But no spring transfer, so it's like if you miss it, if you don't get your 60 units in and you miss it by a semester, you got to wait another whole year before you can apply to get in. But they love, the CSUs and the UCs love transfer students. They're more focused, they're a little bit older, more responsible, they get in, they get out. So they're really trying to protect that number. So bottom line, admissions are new admissions criteria for, our juniors right now turning seniors, right? It used to be if you're in the top 4% in your high school, you were guaranteed admission to the UC. Not necessarily the school of your choice. Of course, Cal and UCLA did not guarantee it. Now, they've reworked their formula. So if you're top 9% in your high school, or you're top 9% of the state, they have this index. It just came out, I haven't calculated it yet. You would be guaranteed admission to a UC, not necessarily the school of your choice. And it used to be that like Davis would guarantee it, or Santa Barbara, but what they're saying is with guaranteeing this much greater number now, it's just fewer schools are going to be able to guarantee my school. So they're still saying apply broadly, you're guaranteed somewhere, but you won't get in if you don't pay your $65 plus $20 for test scores. You got to apply to all of them and then see which one you're going to get into, and they'll all look at you and decide if they want you or not. Interesting. See, so the UCs are also really about diversity. They have directors of diversity hired, and it's not just racial diversity ethnic diversity that they're talking about. They're talking here. But 50,000 applications, 2010. Now, overall, they have their acceptance rate at Cal was approximately. I'll go back one more, previous. 16 of the 23 campuses are impacted, meaning they cannot accommodate all the kids that want to go to those schools. Okay, so it's taking number one longer to graduate, and they've moved to this geographic admissions model. And what that means is every one of the 23 CSUs is assigned a geographic area. So let's just take Chico for a minute. If you're in the Chico geographic area, you only need to meet the minimum admission requirements to go to Chico. You got to have those 15-year-long classes. Get a true safety school for your student. Cal State East Bay and SF State, which SF State is impacted, so kids outside of here can't get in there very easily. Or by taking an assessment test. You can show us you're ready. If one of these 3 ways does not show us that you're ready for college level math or English, even though you've taken all the classes in high school and you've gotten a C- or better and all, and you think you'd be ready, but you're not, you have 1 year to remove this contingency, or you're out. So they're going to allow those kids to start taking a remediation class online in the summer. This is new. We'll see how it all goes. Math. From the Chancellor's office last year, I wrote it in big quotes. Studies show that students' success is linked to math. Students who are taking math in high school and in the senior year particularly have a higher success rate in college than students who stop taking math. So even if you're not good at math, that's not a reason to stop taking math because you're not good at it. You keep going. You find a level that is right for you, and you keep working at it. And we're seeing more schools now nationwide that are, I know some of the Oregon schools and others are requiring math at some level in the senior year. Applying transfer prep, one of their biggest objectives. Look at these numbers. 55% of CSU graduates come from California Community College. 30% of all UC grads come from California Community College. My daughter's going to be one of those right there, we hope. Career and tech ed is another function, and then foundational skills, remediation is another function. 3 main functions, but one of the biggest ones is transfer prep. They have amazing services there. They have services for students with learning disabilities, kids who have test anxiety. They have career fairs there. They have employers coming in. They have everything. And that's the thing to start turning around before you get there. Okay, stay abreast of it, but you kind of have a little framework for making sense of things. You know what to be listening for. So what can you do in middle school? Well, 8th grade performance does matter. 2 years. Number 1. The student needs to take the most demanding course schedule he or she can possibly handle. That allows for good grades. You don't want to stretch so much grades start falling. Sleep. I cannot tell you how many kids, they get I hated every day of that year, and I was sick all the time, and it was terrible. I did everything you told me to do. I was in every club and organization, and I took all these hard classes, and I had no time to enjoy myself. And I didn't even get into the school I wanted in my first choice school. I got that D because this one kid was 18 Marnell. She had all the prerequisites taking the class. Her dad was actually like the CEO at a big garbage company, actually. So it's sort of talking her home, recycling that whole thing. Just worked and worked and worked and just could not. It was her first AP class, could not make that happen, and got the D, continued to try and stay in the class, worked with the teacher. Eventually just wasn't going to work, let go of it. Just completely panicked. No way to repeat that class because you don't remediate an AP class. There's hardly any classes offered anymore for remediation in the summer with the budget class. You cannot take a science class online. Lab classes you cannot take them online. It wasn't offered anywhere. So we just had to go on. So then senior year, she went on and she took another science class, anatomy and physiology. She did really well. And so the joke became, she got into every school she applied to. And then there was one last school that we hadn't heard from in her mom said, I learned she never really applied. I said, it probably doesn't matter because she's probably going to get in anyway. So she was getting into school after school. And she had a D. I had another boy who had a D in biology. He stretched too far. They moved to a new quarter kind of model and got a D. Same thing. Couldn't remediate it online. Wouldn't work in the schedule, whatever, tried to work the counselor, couldn't do it. And he wanted to go into marine biology. And so one of his favorite schools was University of Oregon. If you have a 3.4, you're guaranteed in. You apply early in November, you're here right away, you're guaranteed in. He did not have a 3.4. Early in November, he went up, he turned his app in, he went up there, he did his resume. He was a Boy Scout, Eagle Scout, loves marine biology, all that. Took his computer up with him, met with the advisor for the biology department, gave him his resume, and the professor said, I've never had anybody give me a resume before. And then he fessed up that he got that D and he couldn't repeat it, and he said, well, did you die? And he said, no. And then he showed him all his underwater fish photography. 2 days later, that boy got an acceptance to the University of Oregon, even though he didn't have the 3.4. They were only admitting kids with 3.4. And I had kids with an 800 math test score from mere money and all kinds of AP and honors classes with a 3.3 who didn't hear until a week ago. 10 and 11, they don't look at your grades in 9th grade, except Cal Poly. And who knows, that might shift over time, right? But if you're looking outside the CSUs and UCs, and many of our kids, I'm hoping we're looking outside the CSUs and UCs now, you can see what's going on. 9th grade grades do count in that GPA. Strive for 5 academic solids a year. Consider an A period in the early years, before that junior year when life gets so tough and your classes get the very hardest and you have all that testing. Don't trade science in grade 9 for visual and performing arts. So kids, though they're not a great science student, or they're not ready, they're not high enough level math, they're not ready for bio. So like, well, I don't want to take that science class, it's not biology, it's stupid. You know, it's a college prep class. So number one, they're not strong in science. Now they want to take a year off science so they can take drama. The last thing you need to do if you're not good in science is take a year off of science. Take the science class that's appropriate for you, and if you want to take your visual and performing art in grade 9, guess what? Take an A period. Do it then. Don't sacrifice the A through G class so you can get your visual and performing art in. Keep that language going and consider some of these other languages. If you're taking a non-academic course, and kids do, they're in leadership. I would never tell a student don't be in leadership. What I say to them is, if you're going to be in leadership, I want you to be a class officer. I want you to work up to be a committee head over time. I want you to have goals when you go in. I want you to be able to talk about what you accomplished there. If you're totally into physics and you want to go into engineering, and you want to take auto shop, okay, that goes with it. Pick non-academic courses because you're interested in them and because they're meaningful to you, and you're going to have a goal and you're going to do something when you're in them. General rule, get extra help if you're not working at the D level. Just kind of get that in their mind. If you're not at the D level, you're going to stand a test, you should be talking to your teacher. And then we're shooting. Don't wait till they get to D to get it up. And remediating courses immediately. Remember, a D will not get you into college. You have to repeat the class. I have kids. I have somebody who's going to be a senior now, and he hasn't repeated sophomore English yet. So it's really hard to develop that academic interest. Here's some activities that are meaningful. I've got those in my handout on the way out. Junior and senior years, when you want to start showing leadership. Getting recognized for your efforts. Competing, winning competitions. Academics come first. A lot of these kids get really, out of balance. And I've got so many things going on at time for my work. Building that diversified college list and visit colleges you love. Students, best way to help the parents. Get the best grades you can. Colleges will offer you money for your grades. Even schools that are not that top tier are going to offer you money for your grades and your test scores, or if you have a special talent. Parents, find out your expected family contribution now. I give you a website on my handout, collegeboard.com. Go in, put in that high-level data. Find out what the college, federal government, expects you to contribute to your college education. That number, remains, it might change from year to year, but that's the number you got to be saving for. Because even if you could get financial aid for the rest of that money, it's going to be mostly loans for the rest of that money, but you still have to come up with that EFC. So the EFC for a family of 4 with adjusted gross income of $150,000, you're going to be expected to pay about $20,000 a year. Assuming you could even get financial aid on top of that, and that's going to be loans. It's not going to be all grants. And it's always best to save versus borrowing. Remember, most of the schools and most of the students who apply, we need to think beyond the CSUs and UCs unless something really changes. Find a college where your student is going to thrive, where your student is going to be performing in the top 25%. So I thank you for your time, and I've gone over my time. Where's Ruth?